Okay.
Vandeham Sri Guru Yuta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tang Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitangscha. So we're reading from Brhad Bhagavatamrta of Sri Sanatana Goswami, the second part, halfway through the chapter of Jnana, Nam, knowledge. Being frightened by him, Brahma ran away to an unknown solitude. Sri Bhagavan no doubt at once killed that asura, yet fear-stricken Brahma did not come back, at which Sri Bhagavan appointed me at the post of Brahma. When I got the charge of creation, first of all I created Vaishnavas for furtherance of the bhakti cult of Bhagavan, and I put them in charge of Prajapati, Indra, Chandra, and others. Everywhere I introduced Ashwamedha Yagya for the worship of the Lord of the universe and created joy all around. When I sat on the throne, the Vedas, Yagyas, all the Puranas, Itihasas, Agamas, Tirthas, Maharshis, Brahmarshis, and others made their panegyrics to me. Though I sat on the highest pedestal and was receiving the best honor from everyone, yet I maintained all possible humbleness. But due to great responsibility, like shoreless ocean troubled by the wave of the sea, the endless thoughts of responsibility were dashing against my heart, which actually disturbed my feeling of devotion to Bhagavan. I, the Brahma, knew well that I would be living up to the period as long as Dviparartha years, yet I had the fear of Kala, death or time, and to get rid of that fear of death while I attached to my mantra japa, once again the pangs of separation from Vrindavana pained my heart. The Lord much affectionately looked after me as if I were his own child, at which no doubt I was inundated into the ocean of bliss, and my oscillating mind became tranquil. I looked upon him as my father, and remaining close by, rendered my service accordingly. At any time, if I did any offence, he at once forgave me. But I was extremely feeling wounded at heart for such inadvertence. But Sri Lakshmi Devi, having studied my heart, consoled me with her motherly affection. Ah, what a fathomless affection had I received from her, which rooted out all my sorrows from the heart, and I continued my stay in Satyaloka. When I was living thus, one day it so happened that I met a jiva who came to this Satyaloka from Bharatavarsha after getting mukti, and who was then significantly glorified by the Maharshis, at which I inquired of the rishis why they were so significantly glorifying him. On my inquiry, they exhaustively explained to me about the paramount position of mukti, which is almost inaccessible. I became covetous for gaining mukti, therefore I begged of those rishis, who were the very embodiment of Vedic learnings, to tell me how to get the mukti. The goddesses of the Upanishads, joining with Shrutis and Smritis, in one voice replied that there is no other safe method except the jnana of the absolute truth. Among them, some of the Puranas, Agamas, and Pancharatras, who are most clever to initiate bhakti cult to Bhagavan, said aloud with full dignity that though jnana, no doubt mukti is gained, but that jnana can never get its unalloyed manifestation by any other method save and except by culturing unalloyed devotion to Bhagavan. Alternatively, so to say, that mukti is easily accessible to one who is selfless, desireless, and non-interested in other objects except unalloyed devotion to Bhagavan for his sake alone. At this remark, some of the Shrutis and Smritis nodded their heads in supporting the views. When those Shrutis and Smritis wholeheartedly did not subscribe to the undisputed agreement that mukti, true to its sense, easily can be had by dint of bhakti alone, some of the Maha Upanishads, along with associate agamas and Puranas, without any contradiction declared and well established the truth that bhakti alone is the means to attain final mukti. At such remarks, some principal Upanishads, along with other secret agamas and most important Vaishnava tantras, as well as Srimad Bhagavatam, accompanied by other Mahapuranas, simply smiled and became silent because they thought, what a great influence of Maya. Even the most learned are not aware of the hidden truth of the Shastra. Fly unto them that they do not know the efficacy of bhakti, and therefore better to be silent, as without the direct grace from God, even if we speak about the glories of bhakti, they will not be able to understand. Anyhow, continuing the argument, Vedas and Puranas and other agamas simply wasted their time on arguing on controversial topics in respect of whether Bhagavatamrta japa can bring mukti, or alternatively there are other means for gaining mukti, at which the most important Mahapuranas, along with the Upanishads, felt extremely disturbed at heart with such vain arguments and put fingers into their ears and stood aside. Anyhow, finally those Mahapuranas and Mahaupanishads were accepted as the tribunal, and in their final judgment they declared that bhakti alone is not only the means for attaining mukti, but also produces prema, which is far superior to mukti. At this declaration of unbiased judgment, I was extremely pleased. I could study the dignity and straightforwardness of those Vaishnava Puranas and Agamas, and with my humble prayer they were brought to my assembly. I, with humility, begged them what was the reason for which they kept silence at first and put fingers into their ears, at which, with simple smiling, the Upanishads, the crown of the Shrutis, Satvata Vaishnava Pancharatra Agamas, and Srimad Bhagavatam, in a single voice said, Bho, Gopakumara, now appointed as a Brahma, your inquiry is more precious than the gems and secret of all secrets, and also we find you are endowed with the choicest qualities which touch our heart. So we shall narrate it before you. We are supposed to narrate through and through the essential characteristic of bhakti to Bhagavan. But at times we have discussed about mukti with a view to pointing out the littleness of its maintenance and finally to discard it. It so happened that while we were devoted to signify the glorification of bhakti, we had to take into account the pleasure of mukti also, as for instances We have to point out that the bliss of bhakti is a crore of times superior to the bliss of mukti. And again, that the bliss of mukti will not be eternally existing, whereas the bliss of bhakti has got its transcendental existence, which is the very ripening fruit of the Vedas, which are the only means. Whereas in final mukti, there remains no feeling of bliss. As, for example, when a man gets rid of sufferings, the want of suffering is negatively, no doubt, a happiness. Again, suppose a man had a sound sleep, but when he gets up he says, "Oh, how happily I slept." Likewise, in mukti, cessation of sorrows is equated to bliss or ananda, but to speak the truth, such moksha, mukti, is a misnomer of bliss. Therefore, those who subscribe to it are ignorance. Whereas by uttering even the dawn divine name, Namabhasa, one easily gets mukti. And if once the transcendental name of Bhagavan is chanted or heard, final mukti, possessing blissful service to the Lord, is easily attained. Due to dull-headedness, mumukshus are tempted to moksha. Moksha never is considered blissful attainment. In consonance with the verdicts of the Vedas, Puranas, and Itihasas proclaim this truth. The moksha which destroys all types of sufferings, or the moksha through which one gets rid of nescience or cuts asunder the knots of karma propensities, or the moksha which destroys the misidentification of the self with the body, in none of these kinds of moksha there remains divine bliss true to its sense. Let it go. Even self-realized jnani's state of equilibrium, if at all is to be considered blissful, then in comparison with the realization of the Sananda Vigraha, transcendental blissful embodiment of supreme divinity, it may be said that the jnani's moksha is a drop in the ocean of bliss of God realization of a devotee. The Jnani says that when the soul is disassociated from Maya, it becomes Brahman, and that Brahman is attributeless, formless, and desireless. Whereas the realization of a devotee is the transcendental blissful embodiment of Bhagavan, who is the Parabrahman, Paramatman, the Parameshwara, and the very shoreless ocean of all auspicious, non-phenomenal qualities. All the opposite qualities get their assimilation in the person of the Supreme Divinity. He is the mainstay of Brahman, who is nothing but the effulgence of his transcendental body. Brahman of Jnani is not a separate entity, but, as stated above, correlated. Accordingly, the jiva, in its realized state, in brackets, from Maya cannot be the Brahman itself, but an aspect of his vibhuti, end of brackets. Therefore, Sri Bhagavan, the final realized object of the devotees, is the very embodiment of eternal bliss. And the transcendental bliss of Bhagavan can be tasted only through bhakti. The wise says that the lotus feet of Bhagavan Sri Krishna is the inexhaustible store of nectarine transcendental bliss, like the bed of the fathomless ocean, whereas Brahman of the Jnani is, if at all to be considered, maybe negative aspect of bliss. Let us take into account the Jnani's conception of Mukta Jiva as Brahman, then Mukta Jiva becomes Satchidananda, Bhagavan himself. Yet to their agreement, such rishis like Parashara says, Jivas are ansas of Bhagavan. Jiva souls are not only different from Bhagavan when subjected by Maya, whereas eternally they are distinct from Brahman. They are Sanatana, that is, from their very beginning, in their essential character, they are like rays of the sun, or like the sparks of the fire, or like the waves of the sea. Sri Bhagavan is the origin of all origins. There is no beginning or end for him, yet he does his transcendental Leela. Though eternally birthless, he is born for sportive Leela, like his Vraja Leela, but that is done through his supralogical essential Shakti, whereas Jiva souls are subjected by his Maha Maya, external deluding potency, and they, in their very constitution, from the very origin, may be illusioned by Maya, whereas Bhagavan is the very controller of Maya. So, spiritually, it is established that Jiva souls are eternally different from Bhagavan, yet not a separate entity from him, but atomic parts of his Tatastha Shakti. Jiva soul in essence simultaneously is distinct and non-distinct in relation to Bhagavan. Quantitatively same, whereas quantitatively different. Such is the truth established by the sadhus. Therefore, after mukti, Jiva never can become one with Bhagavan, whereas he eternally remains in that spiritual plane as servitor in relation to God as served. Even Sri Shankaracharya, the very propounder of Jnanavad, in this context agreed that mukta api leelaya vigraham kritva bhagavantam bhajanti. After mukti, having a spiritual form, one serves Bhagavan eternally. Here, having a spiritual form denotes the eternal form of the Jiva soul with his essential characteristic of servitorship to the eternal served God. Jiva soul, in essence, is eternally a servitor to Sri Krishna, but due to forgetfulness of service to Sri Krishna, he is entangled in Maya and becomes subject to this cycle of births. This forgetfulness is caused due to his conditional existence on the demarcating line between Chit and Achit Jagat. Again, when he realizes his very essential characteristic, viz., as an eternal servitor of God, this is possible only when enlightened with bhakti by a holy man, devotee of God, and at once the knots of the samsara are cut asunder, the illusion is removed, and he realizes himself as an eternal sanatana object spiritually related to Bhagavan. As it is said, as you sow, so you reap. As one does sadhana, so is the reward. When one, leaving aside the transcendental process, taking recourse to inductive process, tries to get mukti, and that mukti amounts to most negligible bliss. Being afraid of the crucial threefold misery of samsara, when one follows the life of abnegation, aspiring after moksha, to his imagination, moksha may appear as the most avaricious attainment, but it is like a castle in the air. So too, desirous people aspire after the heavenly bliss, which they think akshaya, ever existing, but is most ephemeral. But to speak the truth, the full-fledged, radiant, transcendental nectarine bliss can be had only through culturing the unalloyed devotion to Bhagavan, which is the natural outcome of the blossoming soul and also spontaneous. The bliss of bhakti is the paramount state of all sadhana and the highest attainment of any aspiration. Bliss of bhakti is the be-all and end-all Bhakti is the shoreless ocean of nectarine bliss. Again, there is spontaneous flow of the nectarine bliss of bhakti, which fascinates characteristically with its blooming fragrance in the transparent heart of the devotee. One who is known as Paramatma or Parabrahman is the same as Parameshwara. Therefore, ontologically, they are one and the same. Jiva souls are not different entity from Parabrahman, but they are emanated from the Tatastha Shakti of the Supreme, generally known as Vibhinangsa. Therefore, ontologically not different from the Supreme, and at the same time morphologically not one and the same with the Supreme Brahman. From subjective and objective views, both have transcendental characteristics. Therefore, without any contradiction, they are simultaneously in eternal distinction and non-distinction in relation. This is the established truth. The Acharyas of Bhakti cult undisputedly subscribe to this theory. Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the undisputed authority, and the sayings of Paramahamsas like Sri Narada, Prahlada, as well as the characteristic of crest-jewel great ones like Sri Shuka and Sanaka, etc., are the proofs of the paramount position of bhakti. Besides, there are innumerable stories in this respect, but they should not be considered as mere exaggerations, or they should not be underestimated. If anybody misconstrues these unbiased, authentic Shastric accounts and the self-revealed truth narrated by crest-jewel devotees, then it shows his atheistic gross mentality, and therefore, due to his offense, he will be degraded to the worst possible hell. Ah, fie unto moksha. Those tyrannical asuras whose target are even innocent cows and brahmanas, when they are killed at the hands of God, get moksha. And the pity is this, that even aspirants who adhere to the moksha cult discard such asuras out and out. Therefore, how can moksha be praiseworthy? So no fortunate soul should aspire after such mukti. Sadhus and asuras are in two opposite poles, and their way of life is quite antagonistic. Therefore, attainment must be quite different. So it is a fact that devotion to Sri Krishna is the very characteristic of a sadhu, and bhakti alone is the means to attain Sri Krishna. And the best reward for culturing bhakti is to be endowed with loving devotion at the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. Those great souls who all aspire after nothing but devotion to Sri Krishna alone, to them bhakti is the means as well as the end in itself, and that bhakti is nothing but the eternal nectar at the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. One must completely eschew from the heart the propensities of karma, jnana, and vairagya. Otherwise, this unalloyed bhakti cannot be cultured. Those who all have taken sole recourse of bhakti alone are enlightened by the grace of Sri Krishna. One meets the single-minded devotee who graciously enlightens him. They are the only eligible persons to be endowed with bhakti cult. Karma stands as an obstacle on the way of bhakti. Vairagya sucks away the sentiment of bhakti, and jnana destroys the flow of bhakti. But when karma, jnana, and vairagya are sublimated from their gross elements and unconditionally submit to bhakti, then primarily they may be accepted by a neophyte for his culture of bhakti. Yes. I might as well go to the end of the chapter, Mark, and then you can take up the next one, yeah?
Oh my God, it's like the whole of Krishna Siddhanta. It's all in.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
carry on, please.
Therefore, Atma Rama Munis, having chanced to associate themselves with the devotees of Bhagavan, become recipients of the grace of Bhagavan, and they give up Brahmanishta, the aspiration of mukti, and forthwith take recourse to bhakti to Bhagavan. Even the muktas, having bathed with the grace of Sri Bhagavan, endowed with transcendental form and with that spiritual body and senses, eternally serve the Lord. Ahankara Tattvavadins, such as Vashishta, have pointed out Atma Ramata can easily be achieved by one who can negate himself from ego. Although moksha is the offspring of bhakti, yet devotees never aspire after it, because moksha is antagonistic to the prema, which is the natural outcome of culturing bhakti. Prema is the ultimate reward of unalloyed devotion, and this bhakti has got a wonderful characteristic, that it creates ever increasing thirst for loving service to God. Therefore, Atma Ramata, without servicing propensity, is most condemnable. It is not at all surprising how Atma Ramata can be had without bhakti. There should be the least suspicion in mind in this respect, shouldn't be, as Atma Ramata is not a great achievement. The crest jewel devotees of Bhagavan consider that it is as good a spiritual achievement when one hates Atma Ramata, because Atma Ramata is like a will-o'-the-wisp. Let it be. Suppose through the performance of Swadharma under the light of Jnana Mishra Bhakti, first purification of the heart and then Atma Ramata is achieved, yet it is considered as, as the negative achievement of bhakti, whereas prema is the direct result thereof. But after achieving Atma Ramata, when one takes recourse to the service of the lotus feet of Sri Bhagavan, easily he can taste the nectarine sweetness of the succulence of bhakti. The bliss or succulence of bhakti is eternally tasted by the devotees, but that feeling saturates all our senses when all of them are engaged in his loving service. It becomes spontaneous and gives ever increasing wonderful charms and fascinates all the senses characteristically engaged in his service. When the spiritual senses are engaged in his service, like attending his feet, fanning with chamara, then naturally at heart wings the sweet, all-charming form and sports of Sri Krishna, and thereby, saturated with love, the devotee sings his glories and leela, which surcharges all the senses at which they feel why they had not got millions and millions of sense faculties for rendering service to God. Again, Atma Rama Munis ever remain in samadhi, and as per their theory, in that state the mind does not function, nor passively any feeling remains. Therefore, if any bliss is considered thereof, that is abstract and abstruse. Whereas in the transparent heart of a bhakta, there flows incessantly nectarine current of bhakti, which with transcendental swing to the Bhagavan Nama, Rupa, Guna and Leela. As the sun goes not shine so much in the opaque sky as it does on the transparent marble hillock, similarly, as per argument, it is clearly established that bliss of bhakti is far superior to moksha in meditation, and this bliss of bhakti can be had only by the grace of Bhagavan, who is most affectionately disposed to his devotees. The bliss of moksha is abstruse, but the bliss of bhakti is wonderful and full of ever-increasing charm. And with multifarious characteristic of bhakti, through their logical mind or through empiricism, cannot smell the flavor of bhakti rasa. The Satchit Ananda embodiment of Sri Vishnu, who is one without a second, through his superlogical power manifests himself in different majestic and beatific aspects without any modification to the perspective of the respective sentiment of different types of devotees. But non-devotees cannot conceive of such variegated characteristic of Bhagavan. Just as an infant considers its glass-made toy more valuable than a philosopher's stone, so a professor of jnana does not hesitate to think of moksha as better than prema. All glory to his sweetness. His abounding mercy to his devotees is still sweeter, and the nectarine bliss that the devotees enjoy is the fathomless ocean of nectarine sweetness, whereas Brahmananda is a will-o'-the-wisp. For magnifying the devotional fervor of his devotees and to send them floating in the current of ever-increasing nectarine bliss, Sri Bhagavan manifests his beatific magnanimity in his variegated leelas. His transcendental nama, rupa, guna and leela, when heard or sung or heard by the devotees, it creates in them the current of ocean of bliss, and the respective leela not only brings floods in the heart of the devotees, but also, like the waves of the sea touches the shore, brings ecstasy in the spiritual senses as well as to the physical body. In Sri Krishna, who is the very embodiment of transcendental bliss and the personification of all majesty and beauty, rest all the auspicious transcendental qualities with characteristic speciality. He ever sports with Mahalakshmi, Sri Radha, and passionately associates himself with his eternal devotees. Devotion to him is spontaneous and eternal, and his dharma, the sportive land like Braja, is transcendental. Such Sri Krishna may protect you from hindrances, especially from mumukshu, the devilish idea of moksha. The crest jewel devotees of Bhagavan never put impudent and agnostic into the puddings of bhakti rasa, yet I have here taken liberty to put it together in a nutshell with a view to preventing the neophyte aspirants from the will-o'-the-wisp of moksha aspiration and to inundate them into the ocean of bliss of bhakti. Now, if you clearly understand the most negligible worthiness of moksha, and with the right spirit yearn for the fathomless treasure of bhakti, then solely devote yourself to the chanting of Mahamantra which you have received from your spiritual guru, and try to understand the most secret fact that there are 8 shells, such that each one is 10 times larger than the just previous one, and in their subtle form they remain around the universe, whose circumference is 5,000 crores of yojanas. After crossing these 8-fold circles of the universe, one attains the state of nirvana moksha, where cause and effect stand in equilibrium, and there closes all perceptions and conceptions. This state is also known as Mahakalapura. The jnanis, although they say that their state of equilibrium is beyond expression, yet sometimes they say that there is perception of non-qualified Brahman, but others say that there is positively perception of qualified Brahman. Therefore, you will positively meet your lifelong aspired object by dint of devoutly incessant chanting of Mahamantra. If you are earnestly thirsting for that bliss, then without any loss of time, approach Vrajaland. Sri Gopakumara said, on attentively listening to the behest of the Vedas and Puranas, etc., I became more saturated with loving devotion to Bhagavan. Bho, Mathura Brahmin, at that time I thought that when all the undisputed Shastras, directly, without any contradiction, advised culture of uninterrupted devotion to Bhagavan, whom I possess now as my own father, why should I go elsewhere, leaving him behind? It agitated my mind very much, but the Lord, the monitor of the soul, out of his great mercy, in person, spoke to me. Sri Bhagavan said, you are the dearest one to me. I advise you, approach Mathura Brajabhumi, where I eternally sport, disclosing my most esoteric Leela. Moreover, so glorified is the land of Braja that even Sri Brahma prayed for having a chance to be born as a grass in Braja. Though ages have passed, yet as before the land is endowed with transcendental blossoming beauty and charm. There, at Braja, you will again meet your Gurudeva, who is most favourite to me, and by the abounding grace of him you will realize every aspect of truth in relation to my esoteric Leela. No doubt at Mahakalapura too you may have darshan of my other self, and there you may perceive bliss superior to that of this Brahmaloka. I shower my blessing unto you, so that you may move about, whether at Mahakalapura or to any part of the universe, and everywhere you may meet wonderful events. Therefore, it is left to you whether you want to go to Mahakalapura to enjoy mukti or to the blissful land of Braja. But one thing, my darling, it is sure, after some time, with the fulfillment of your yearnings, you will join at my Brindavana Leela and will sport with me freely. Sri Gopakumara said, having by direct command of Bhagavan, with the promise of hopes that I shall join with him at his sports in Brindavana, at once, as speedily as mind, I hastened to this Brindavana. I also felt the pang of separation from the Lord on my journey. And thus ends chapter 2 of part 2.
Oh my God. Phew. Carry on, Mark. It's beautiful. Thank you so much. Oh my God. Oh my God.
Jai Radhe.
Jai Radhe.
Jai Krishna, Jai Vrindavan. Hare Krishna. Chapter 3, Bhajana Nama. Sri Gopakumara said, Bo Mathura Brahmana, while returning from Brahmaloka to this world, I could see none, including devas and human beings, at any place, viz., everything being ephemeral was destroyed due to the influence of time. But at Mathura circle, everything existed as it was. There were, as before, existing beautiful groves, Govardhan Mountain, River Yamuna, as well as people, cattle, and birds. It showed that the Dharma and its objects are transcendental, never subject to time. Keeping my faith in the words of Sri Bhagavan, who directed me to this place, I vigorously roamed about the different places of Vrindavana in search of my Sri Guru Deva. And one day, to my great good luck, near this kunja, I could find him in a condition of ecstatic trance. After great labor and exercising several methods, I could bring him in a normal condition. I fell in prostration before him. He lifted me up and gave me a hearty embrace. As a self-realized soul, he could study my mind. Soon he finished his bath and then made me sit before him. Next, he taught me the method of meditation of the mantra with which he initiated me before. Some instructions he gave orally, and some, due to ecstatic feeling, could not be expressed, and therefore were symbolically indicated. Next, he most affectionately said, "My most darling one, I unreservedly grace you. By my grace, what will you not know? Everything you will gain in life." My hairs stood on their ends in excessive joy, and once again I fell in prostration at his feet. In the meantime, he disappeared from my sight, and nowhere I could trace him out. I felt extremely the pang of sudden disappearance of Sri Gurudeva, yet I composed my mind, and following his instructions, I devoted myself to muttering the mantra, which he gave me with greater interest. Now, the supernatural power of the mantra acted upon me. I realized that I lost my gross body, composed of 5 elements of this earth, viz. Earth, ether, water, fire, and air, and obtaining some celestial body, I was moving upwards. I proceeded still beyond the jurisdiction of the sun, passing through all the 14 worlds of the universe, and I could observe that all those worlds were full of sufferings, at the same time appearing pleasant like the mirage in a desert, and as false as the dreams at night. The worlds which I had previously to get the worlds which I had previously to get after a very, very long period, now I passed through them in no time, as if with the speed of the mind I crossed them all. Finally, I arrived at that 8-fold Mahakalapura. Each one of them.
Sorry, you're covering your face with the book.
Sorry.
Sorry. It's lovely, beautiful. Sorry.
Finally, I arrived at that 8-fold Mahakalapura. Each one of them possessing a crore times superior type of happiness and wealth to that of Brahmaloka, and as it is already spoken, that each one of them is 10 times larger than just previous ones. Therefore, the happiness and the wealth too should accordingly be calculated. Those who all had taken the gradual process of mukti after transcending the gross body will, through the acting agent of the subtle body, try to realize the superior type of happiness of these 14 worlds through the causative subtle elements and go to those 8-fold Mahakalapura. Through the inductive process, first the mind is taken out from this gross body, the acting agent of the mind, and then, after overcoming the subtle one goes to mukti world. But those who could not destroy the causative elements, they have gradually to cross the 14-fold universe composed of the elements produced by Mahat Tattva, being charged by Bhagavan himself, viz. 10 senses, along with their king, the Sattvic mind, and the objects of their enjoyments, i.e. Rupa, Rasa, Gandha, Shabda, and Sparsha, color, beauty, taste, smell, sound, and touch. And then, after discarding the temptation of pleasure of those 8-fold worlds, actually one gets the state of equilibrium, which is known as mukti. But those who get direct mukti, viz. The devotees, need not struggle for fighting against these elements. The charm of these worlds never can create any temptation in the purified heart of a devotee. First, I entered into the first shell of the universe, where I saw the goddess Earth, who is the goddess of the entire wealth of the universe, engaged in worshipping Mahavaraha Deva, Vishnu in the form of a boar. with most costly rare materials, and the seeds of all the wealth of the universe were shining in the pores of its hairs, so great he was. Further, I saw in that efficient causative element rest in the subtlest form the materials of the creative universe. The goddess Earth soon completed her worship to the Lord. She welcomed me with best honor of a guest and requested to stay there for some days in merriment. But I took leave of her. It shows that as aspirant should not delay in his journey to Mukti. And by some unknown force, I soon crossed the other 6 shells. Those shells are known as water shell, light shell, air shell, ether shell, ego shell, and Mahat Tattva shell, where respectively are worshipped Vishnu in the form of fish, sun, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, Shankarshana, and Vasudeva. That I observed. In these shells, respectively, the pleasures of enjoyment are superior in gradation. In all these shells, like the goddess Earth, the goddess of the respective shells welcomed me, offering their best object of merrymaking. Anyhow, at last I entered into the most tamasic, pitch-dark shell, which is known as Prakriti shell, the deep Shama complexion of Prakriti, which is similar to the form of my Lord that delighted me, and therefore I could not proceed further. The goddess Prakriti, who fascinates every jiva to her fold, was engaged in worshipping her Lord in the form of Mohini, viz. The Lord in such a beatific form that the Maya Devi, whose beauty glamours all creatures of the universe herself, is infatuated with the beauty of the Lord, but with a loving spirit is worshipping him. After attending the puja, she approached me with her elusive beatific form. She placed at my disposal all the siddhas like Anima, Lagima, etc., and requested me to stay over there. Next, she affectionately asked me whether I wanted mukti, and further she said, whatever it may be, in both the cases one has to look for my favor, because if I exercise my elusive power and stand on the way, no one can overcome me and get mukti, and by my favor, when one gets mukti, he possesses all the siddhis, which I just now readily give you. And then if you want to possess bhakti, even then you have to look for my favor, because there I am, a maid servitor to Sri Vishnu, and at the same time I am his sister as well as his Shakti. Therefore, serve me first. Sri Gopakumara said, I neither accepted her offer of siddhis nor agreed to her other proposals. I simply paid my obeisance to her, considering her as a glamorous beauty. I saw those jivas who released themselves from the gross body in their abstract subtle form were enjoying her charming beauty, and that she, completely disassociating herself from the cause and effect, created some glamours which were neither phenomenal nor spiritual, and delightfully enjoying herself. Prakriti herself is inane of power. The causative power is invested to her by Vishnu. Therefore here, when the causative element of Prakriti is in equilibrium, her beauty is to be understood at the beauty of Vishnu, the efficient cause, when in certain respects it is reflected upon her, Mahat Tattva. And the beauty thereof is to be understood as neither phenomenal nor spiritual. Therefore, the enjoyers, viz. The jivas in their abstract subtle form, as well as the Prakriti Devi herself, cannot feel the divine bliss. The shell of that Prakriti was having different aspects, which are unthinkable and most attractive. She was attended by causative 5 elements, as well as with 5 material elements, and she pervaded over the whole universe. Anyhow, by the kindest mercy of the Lord, I could get rid of that most darkened shell and visualized a halo of light which actually opened my eyes. With greater hope and devotion, when I straight pierced my sight through that light, to my wonder, I could notice the Lord with a great effulgence of 1 crore suns. That great God, although having such a great effulgence, yet was not at all scorching like the sun. On the contrary, he was most pleasing to the mind as well as to the eyes. He was bedecked with most valuable and pleasing ornaments. He was having all the 32 symptoms of a Mahapurusha in his person, and was shining with his non-phenomenal qualities as the Lord of the Lords. Although he is having no phenomenal quality, yet he has got innumerable non-phenomenal supernatural qualities, like Bhaktavatsalya, special love for his devotees, etc.
Sorry, Mark, you're covering your face again.
Sorry.
Could you just put because it's fantastic. Just turn the camera down a little bit so we see more of your bottom of your face, because we're missing it when you're talking. Just pull it down the angle.
Can you put something behind that?
Just a tiny little bit, because it's very intense and far out what you're reading. Thank you. That's it. Just now, when you put your head down, it'll be perfect. No, it's too much.
Penny's just doing it. Sorry, all right.
It's too much.
Is that good?
No, put your face down like you read. To go into reading mode.
Yes.
Turn it over a little bit so it's more in the center. That's it.
There you go.
That's it. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Is that okay now?
Okay.
Thank you, Penny. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Okay. Although he is having no phenomenal quality, yet he has got innumerable non-phenomenal supernatural qualities, like Bhaktavatsalya, special love for his devotees, etc. He possesses no material form, but has a transcendental and most attractive form, which is a feast to the eyes as well as to the transparent mind of the devotees. He is the sole controller as well as the efficient cause of the Prakriti, yet he is not at all associated with her. He, as a tutor, never gets any modification in his transcendental characteristic. At the sight of that magnificence of the great God, I felt awe and reverence, as well as a great joy in heart. I could not make up my mind what I had to do then. Although God makes his appearance, yet the senses void of devotion cannot visualize him. I, being endowed with his grace, was not only able to see him, but also could observe his transcendental beauty and glory. But I could not decide whether the Lord was visible to the eyes or to the heart, or whether there is another inner power which alone can visualize the beauty and form of the Lord. Sometimes it so happened that I was observing only the halo, and that formless observation actually pained my heart very much, at which I recounted the favor of Sri Jagannath, who never becomes nirakara, formless. Anyhow, sometime I would visualize him in that transcendental form to my great delight. Sometimes it so happened that I was dissolving myself into that halo, getting Sayujya Mukti, but luckily, by the abounding mercy of the Lord, I was saved. At that time, the light which came out straight from the nail of the lotus feet of the Lord and touched me, immediately I was protected from that degradation. Here it is clearly stated, Sayujya Mukti is a fall from the spiritual enlightenment. Sometimes I saw that the free jivas, like the rays of the sun, in simultaneous distinction and non-distinction in relation with God, were staying all around the Lord, engaging themselves in his loving service, at which I was extremely happy. Observing all the mukta jivas engaged in his service, my pure intellect got inundated by that ocean of bliss, and naturally I became Atmarama. I utilized the entire theory of Nyaya system and came to my conclusion that there remains no other better place than this Mahakalapura for attaining the highest good in life. At this Mahakalapura for attaining the highest good in life. Oh, sorry, it's repeated. At this Mahakalapura, the waves of bliss from the ocean-like reservoir of the lotus feet of the Lord created a blissful feeling of the heart, which makes one naturally forget everything else. Here, in this state, the soul does no service to God, but feels the presence of Him, at which the current of bliss swings in the heart. But especially in my case, due to the grace of my Parama Bhagavata, Sri Gurudeva, and also the spiritual power of the mantra that he, Gurudeva, so graciously bestowed upon me, at no time could I forget the yearning of my heart for visualizing the lotus feet of my most adorable God, Sri Madana Gopal. On the other hand, by dint of having had long in observation the most brilliant Lord, I felt a passionate yearning for meeting my beloved Sri Madana Gopal in person. As my yearning was increasing, I could not feel so much bliss as before by having a sight of the Lord in that personal spiritual form, because I had a fear whether at any time I might be entering into the Sayujya Mukti. Therefore, with the idea of having constant darshana of my beloved Lord at Braja, when I proceeded just a little further, I could hear the wonderful sound of singing and playing of musical instruments. As soon as the sound entered into my ears, I felt extremely delighted and searched all around, and I saw a wonderfully exceptional personage riding on the back of a bull ox coming down from up. He was as whitish as camphor, having 3 eyes, and without any garment on his person, having the moon in half-circle shape on his forehead, most brilliantly shining with the flow of the Ganges from his locks of hair on the head, and anointing ashes on his whole body, and having beautiful garlands of bones of Vaishnavas, round his neck. He was holding the Trishul weapon in his hand. He was associated with his consort, Sri Gauri Devi, who was sitting on his lap, and both were in delightful conversation and were attended by a number of servants, some of whom were holding a beautiful umbrella over their heads, and others were fanning with chamra and delightfully singing. Observing him as such, I was wonderstruck and thought, who is this person with these associates, and how he resides above the world of mukti? Seems he has gone beyond worldliness. Nay, he is far superior to all the muktas collectively, and yet most surprising it is that shamelessly he was keeping his consort, Sri Gauri, on his naked lap, as if he were a most engrossed self. That was a wonder to me. Anyhow, I felt extremely delighted at heart at his very sight, and soon paid my obeisance to him and to his associates, at which he graciously looked upon me with delightful inquisitiveness. I approached Sri Nandishwara, who was leading the party, and inquired about him. He laughingly said, Bo Gopa Balaka, Bo worshipper of Sri Gopala, don't you know this is Jagadishwara, Sri Shivaji? He is the giver of bhakti, dharma, artha, kama, and mukti. And also he helps the devotees for the further development of their bhakti to Bhagavan Sri Vishnu. Not only that, he is worshipable to the muktas, and he is the friend of the devotees. Sri Shivaji, along with Sri Parvati and a limited number of attendants, leaving his own world, Shiva Loka, which can be attained by one who looketh at both him and Sri Krishna identically, now proceeding to Kailash Parvat, being pleased at the devoted friendly service of Kubera. Sri Gopa Kumara said, I was much delighted to hear from Nandishwara that Sri Shivaji and Sri Krishna are identical. Therefore, I thought I would be getting some special grace from Shivaji to realize further the truth. Here, identity is spoken of as Sri Gopakumara's object of worship was Lord Krishna, so he would not be further interested to know anything which was not consonant with his object of worship. From that point of view, the use of the word identity between Sri Shiva and Sri Krishna is to be understood here. Lord Sri Shivaji, who is also the all-knower, could read out my mind, and by his kind instruction, Sri Nandishvara advised me in respect to the identity theory, and accordingly the truth dawned in my heart. I could now realize that Sri Shivaji was non-distinct from Sri Madana Gopal, my presiding deity, as well as that it is he who favors the enhancement of the devotional fervor of a devotee towards Sri Bhagavan Vishnu Krishna. Therefore, I delightfully joined with the attendants of Sri Shivji, and his devotees lovingly treated me, creating a pleasure in me. Next, I heard in detail about Sri Shivaji from Sri Nandi, the ox, on whose back Sri Shivaji is ever carried. He said, Bhagavan Sri Shivaji ever remains in this visible form, viz. Never becomes Nirakara or Sakara like the Lord Vishnu of the Mukti world, and ever stays in his world with the same form, viz. Like Vishnu, he never takes incarnations in different worlds. His single-minded devotees also eternally stay at that Shiva Loka, in engaging themselves delightfully in the service to him. He always keeps himself engaged in singing the Nama Sankirtana of Sri Bhagavan Sri Krishna with ecstatic dance and playing the dom-dom, the instrument that Shiva holds in his hand, to the delight of his devotees, and thereby giving lessons to them about the lustrous characteristic of Nama Sankirtana of Bhagavan, with whom he is to be considered identical. Sri Shivaji, although he is known as the Lord of the universe, Jagadishvara, yet eternally looks on himself as the servant of the Lord in thousand-hooded form, Shesha Bhagavan, and with loving devotion ever worships him. Shiva, about whom is spoken here, is not the Rudra, but Sadashiva, who is qualitative incarnated aspect of Sri Krishna, Guna Avatara. Therefore, as per Swarup Shakti characteristics, ontologically identical with the supreme object. After hearing about the exceptional glories of Shiva Loka, I was put into a great confusion and felt something missing in my heart. First of all, I could not trace out the reason thereof, yet I was trying to find it out. And lastly, when I took recourse to my mantra, which was the special gift to me, soon I realized that without having the taste of the beauty, sweetness, and bliss of the lotus feet of Sri Madana Gopal, my heart was feeling totally empty. Coming to this conclusion, I composed my mind and made him think that this Maheshwara Shivaji in his other form appeared before me as my Lord with a manifestation of those sweet leelas. I put together...
Bookmark.
Sorry. I put together all the philosophy in this respect, but my mind didn't feel complacent. Once again, I tried to teach my mind, saying, "Oh mind, don't keep any suspicion. Although so far in the person of Sri Mahadeva, you have not observed the beauty, sweetness, and the leela of Sri Madan Gopal, but in due course, by dint of his grace, your long-cherished ambition will be fulfilled. For some reason, Shiva halted for some time in the Mukti world, Mahakalapura. I too stood by his side and brought some consolation to my mind by arguing thus. Just when we could hear a few most melodious kirtana songs performed by some great souls at a distance, as soon as the kirtana sound entered into the ears of Sri Shiva, he got submerged into the ocean of bliss and himself started ecstatic dance. Sri Parvati Devi, the very crown of the chastity associated with Sri Nandi and others, started singing the glories and leela of the Supreme Lord and playing on instruments. Next, To my great luck, I saw some personages exquisitely handsome with the beauty and love of adolescence, and also having 4 arms arrived there. Their beauty itself, the very splendor of their ornaments, and the brilliant effulgence that was coming out from their body actually overshadowed the beauty of the followers of Sri Shiva, and they were intoxicated in drinking the nectarine bliss by performing in ecstasy the Nama Sankirtana of their beloved God. Their garments and everything, viz. Garlands, tilakam, everything, etc., were beautiful beyond expression and were creating attraction to the mind. I saw that the 4 Kumaras, Sanak and his other 3 brothers, also accompanied them. The bliss that I felt at their presence actually mystified me, and I could not know whether anything dearer I should have for my heart and soul, or for feasting the eyes on the world outside. I got fully inundated into the ocean of bliss, having met them in that brilliantly shining, blissful condition. After a while, when I could compose myself, I got a desire to become their servant. But due to my suspicious fear and shame that how I could aspire after such a notable gain, I could not beg them for granting me such a favor. To get the servitorship of a Parshada devotee of law of God is a very rare chance. Humble as I was it like a dwarf trying to catch the moon? Such a thought perturbed me very much. Again, I thought of the grace of Sri Shiva. Will they not talk to me once? Where do they stay? Who are they? Let them show their mercy upon me by merely looking at me. Otherwise, I feel myself lifeless. Ah, what a marvel. By embracing them, Sri Shiva even entered into trance. Studying my feeling, Sri Parvati Devi, the very heart of Sri Shiva, asked Ganesha to speak to me. Sri Ganesh said, they are the Parshada devotees of Mahaprabhu Sri Krishna, Lord of Vaikuntha. They got Sarupya Mukti, viz. Possessing the same form as the Lord. And now they have come from Vaikuntha. See, they are now proceeding towards the universe of the 4-headed Brahma. Now look at a distance. Then you find that other Parshada devotees are entering into the universe of 8-headed Brahma. This universe is double the size of that of 4-headed Brahma. Still further, you may see others are approaching the universe of 16-headed Brahma, which is again double the size of that 8-headed Brahma. Likewise, there are Brahma up to having crores of heads, and accordingly, their universe is big in area. Further, Sri Ganesha said, "O most fortunate Gopakumara, observe carefully the respective Parashada devotees for the respective universes according to their dignity. They are having their majesty, and with a fitting honor they are marching, viz. There are innumerable new universes and innumerable Parshadas of Bhagavan, who all have got free access to any world without any obstruction or hindrance." He also said that these Parashada devotees of the Lord of Vaikuntha freely roam about all the universes at all times for enhancement of unadulterated pure devotion. Even those who grudgingly talk or hear the name of the Lord of Vaikuntha just at the time of breathing their last at once approach them and protect them from fear and guide them for further progress on the path of pure devotion. And all august Naistika Brahmacharyas, these four Kumaras are the very devotee incarnates of the Lord of Vaikuntha. They, for the spiritual welfare of the world, like the Parashada devotees of the Lord of Vaikuntha, roam about all the worlds. And at the same time, they also reside at Tapoloka for the consolation of those who, by dint of non-presence of Lord Narayana, feel themselves devoid of. At present, they have chanced to visualize the transcendental form of Sri Bhagavan at Vaikuntha, whose all-fascinating supernatural beauty and grace made them converted from their moksha hallucination into love-intoxicated devotees, and joining with these Parshada devotees of the Lord, they have come here. Now, in association with the devotees of Sri Hari, they are enjoying the nectarine succulence of bhakti. Oh, ho! What should I say about the excellence of Vaikuntha? Ah, there ever brilliantly shines all the supernatural, transcendental, ever-increasing flow of nectarine bliss and paramount glories, where the Lord of Vaikuntha, the consort of Sri Lakshmi Devi, eternally resorts, and the rays from his lotus feet surcharge the land with endless transcendental glories, which are enjoyed by his premic devotees. Who else can understand its spiritual characteristic? Fie unto them who aspire after the moksha hallucination. How can they hold the idea of such blissful glories of the Lord in their heart? If my father Shiva bestows his unreserved grace unto you, then you may hear further about the glories of Vaikuntha, and also may visit that place and in person observe them. Sri Gopakumara said, "Oh, Brahmin, how now I had extraordinary thirst for attaining that Vaikuntha, and I began floating in the waves of hopeful ocean, thinking that I personally would be able to observe everything there. But in the next moment I thought, alas, I am unfit for it. How may it be possible for me? So thinking, I fell unconscious in extreme grief. Noticing me as such, Sri Mahadeva, who is always kind at heart for the destitute and dear among the Vaishnavas, and who always kept reserved in his heart for the distressed, lifted me up and uttered words of consolation thus. Sri Mahadev said, "O Sri Vaishnava, as you desire, so I too ever yearn for living at Vaikuntha along with Parvati Devi. That Vaikuntha world is almost inaccessible. Nay, the muktas ever aspire after it. Even the sons of Brahma, like Bhrigu, along with other great Maharishis, including Brahma himself, and I myself too, perform vigorous sadhana to attain it. What more should I speak about it? Then please listen to me, that one who performs strictly with all purity one's own varna and ashram dharma, without any selfish desire, to him what mercy is bestowed by Sri Hari, and if that is multiplied by 100, so much generally is given to such a jiva when he luckily holds the pontific seat of Brahma. Nay, even that is not enough. And when that is multiplied by another 100 times, such favor generally running unto me would not make one eligible for residing at Vaikuntha. Therefore, it requires another 100 times multiplication. Then only can enter one into that splendidly luminous transcendental Sri Vaikuntha. O Gopaputra, an inhabitant of Sri Govardhan, you being an ardent devotee of Sri Mathura Nath, here, and further you are initiated by a Brahmin who is ever intoxicated in loving service to Sri Krishna. Not only that, you are also deeply inclined to mantra japa. Therefore, you are eligible for attaining Vaikuntha. Among the 4 muktis, this place, the last layer of the 8th shell of Mahakalapura, is meant for Sayuja Mukti. These yatis, sannyasis, are devoted to Jnanavada, viz. Abstract truth, Nirguna Brahman. It suits them. Fie unto them, those whose heart is completely dried up in the forest fire of samsara and lost the taste for the succulence of divine bliss. They are after the will-o'-the-wisp of pleasure. Ah, they look for it. My Lord Sri Krishna commanded me to hide prema bhakti. Therefore, by his command, I tempted the yatis towards this moksha hallucination. Therefore, those who are following the path of devotion of Bhagavan and tasting the bliss thereof, they ever neglect such attainment. Better you should leave this place soon. knowing it as hindrance to your spiritual progress. You may better know it that a Brahman of Dwaraka, who was aspiring after the bliss of devotion to Sri Krishna, with great cleverness took away his son from the world of mukti and placed him again at Dwaraka to enjoy the bliss of service to Sri Krishna. Here it is shown that to join the Dwaraka Leela of Sri Krishna is far, far superior to Sayujya Mukti. But it is your good luck that by dint of your spiritual Guru's grace, you are seeing now the unthinkable, beautiful form of Sri Bhagavan, and also you're able to maintain even now your yearning for meeting Sri Krishna. Again, that too due to the abounding mercy of your Guru. Otherwise, one loses himself in the halo of the Parabrahman. Do you want to carry on? Have we got
Madanji?
Madan?
Madan, oh Madan.
Yeah, okay.
Please.
Sri
Mark,
Gopakumara
wow,
said,
that was so you were lucky to read about all that Shiva. I haven't heard about that. Isn't it amazing? I was imagining Shiva, that first image on bull, white as snow, with snake with the bones of Vaishnavas and then Parvati on his lap. Wow! And then everybody. Anyway, it was glorious and Haribol. Onwards and upwards.
Okay. Sri Gopakumara said, I felt blessed by having a bath at the mercy of Sri Shankara Shiva. At that time, I was wanting to ask him something, but being ashamed, I could not open my mouth. In the meantime, the Parshada devotees of Bhagavan also heard of him, and with due respect to him, they said, the Parshada devotees of Bhagavan said, Bho Bhagavan, there is none equal to the Lord of Vaikuntha, yet there is no difference between you and him, as well as Sri Rama, Lakshmi, and Sri Gauri. You are the very personification of him, so too Gauri is of Sri Rama Devi. You are definitely worthy to live at Vaikuntha, so Gauri too, as you are the dearest grace embodiment of the Lord of Sri Vaikuntha. What you have spoken here as unworthiness of yourself is your characteristic mode, because a devotee of Bhagavan shows his humility and feels himself humble. To speak the truth, you are the very demonstrator of Krishna Prema. In your heart ever swing the waves of the ocean of Krishna Prema. Therefore, Vaishnavas do make panegyrics to you, and among the avatars of Sri Bhagavan, your glory shines above. Sri Gopakumara said, Lord Shiva, hearing his own glorification, felt ashamed and lowered down his head with silence. And then those Parshada devotees of the Lord, who were the dearest friends to me, gave me a heartiest embrace and said, Bho Gopanandan, dear one to the consort of Sri Uma, you perform the japa of the divine mantra of our Lord Narayana, so we accept you as a sincere devotee. There was born of Mathura Brahmin at Gaudadesh, whose name is Jayanta. He is the very incarnation of Sri Krishna, and the same one is your spiritual guru. It is a fact that we have come to this world of mukti only for your sake. For your spiritual gain, we advise you, please listen to us. If you want to live at Vaikuntha, then give up your all other practices, including the mantra japa, and accordingly, with great devotion, cultivate the 9 phases of bhakti. If you now want to attain Vaikuntha, then you learn from us what you have to do. Leaving aside everything else, you should culture 9-fold direct means of devotion, viz. Shravana, Kirtana, etc. Every day, Study Srimad Bhagavatam, from which you will learn the ninefold direct means of bhakti. Constantly listen to the leelas of Sri Bhagavan. With loving devotion, when such leela talks enter your ears, in no time you will attain the lotus feet of Sri Bhagavan. What more, by cultivating any one of those ninefold bhaktis with loving devotion, one can attain Vaikuntha, which is the highest prospect of human pursuit. Because this prema bhakti is the best sadhana among all, no doubt others may say that there are other pursuits to human life than the Vaikuntha, but the devotees of Bhagavan who taste the succulence of bhakti are prudent, like the swan, to collect the substance from the milk and leave aside the water. The premic devotees, although they gain the summum bonum of life by following any one of the aspect of ninefold bhakti, yet they ever cultivate with loving devotion all the ninefold bhakti for the sake of drinking deeper the nectarine succulence of bhakti. No doubt by following any one of the ninefold bhakti with unflinching faith and loving devotion, one naturally gets the manifestation of Sri Krishna prema into his heart. But one thing must carefully be noted, that all types of other desires, which are the diseases of the heart, should be totally given up, and only with loving, unalloyed devotion for the sake of Vaikuntha Seva, these ninefold bhakti should be performed. Because desire for any other gains creates hindrance on the path of approaching Vaikuntha. This bhakti can be cultured at any place, in this world too or elsewhere, and whatever it is performed, there God descends. Yet a bhakta who wants to go to Vaikuntha, because in other places there are other elements which may create interruption, particularly at Vaikuntha one gets association of devotees of same sentiment, and there is no limitation of time and space. Therefore, at Vaikuntha, without any interruption, bhakti easily can be cultured eternally. Again, this performance of bhakti cannot be done with one's own attempt of physical body or material senses, including mind, because bhakti is a transcendental process and beyond three gunas of Maya, therefore not perceivable by sense. Bhakti can be cultured only through spiritually enlightened senses, when they transcend sattva, rajas and tamas. These three gunas of Maya, that is, when one, due to his latent spiritual virtue, chances to meet a spiritually advanced devotee of God Krishna, and thereby gets enlightened with the direct grace from Sri Krishna, and next with unflinching faith and loving interest, he listens to the name, Nama, Rupa, Guna, Leela and Parikara of Sri Krishna, and that actually inundates the heart of the devotee with divine bliss. When one becomes recipient of such grace of Sri Krishna, his intellect, with all the associate senses, becomes purified. He transcends the gross mundanity, and then only the ninefold bhakti gets its manifestation into his heart. Then, and then alone, one can attain Vaikuntha. Karma and jnana relate to body and mind. The phenomenal objects, prakrita senses, which are the product of Maya, how can they culture transcendental process? Bhakti is the transcendental process. Anything which is done with material body or sense is egoistic and cannot be selfless service. Therefore, material senses are incapable of culturing bhakti, whereas when the dormant condition of Atma is awakened by the grace of Sri Krishna, which generally one fortunate soul receives from a spiritual guru, forthwith all the senses, including the body, become surcharged with spiritual current of the soul consonant with the element of the soul the senses act upon. Therefore, apparently, karma and jnana may appear as the same, but bhakti is not at all a mechanical performance of body and mind. Again, equalizing bhakti performance with the rites of one's varna and ashrama duties is a great blasphemy. It is a pathetic conclusion to consider karma and jnana as the same with bhakti. In fact, a body of a devotee of the Lord of Vaikuntha and a body of ordinary being are no doubt similar, yet the devotee's body is surcharged with non-phenomenal elements, whereas the body of an ordinary human being is a compound of material elements. Likewise, bhakti is ever different from karma, though sometimes it appears as bhakti, which must not be misconstrued. Whether a single-minded devotee of God stays at Vaikuntha or in any world, his body is transcendental, and through the spiritual senses, eternally he renders his service to Bhagavan. One may have the doubt that Shravana, Kirtan, etc. are done with or through the material senses only, but it is not a fact. A devotee's senses are surcharged with the electric current of devotion, and in consonance with the soul they function. The whole thing is here transcendental, which is not understood by gross materialists. Like an iron rod, which when placed in fire gets the power of the fire, the soul, surcharged with bhakti, makes the physical body cultured by the soul with the 9 elements. Bhakti and bhakta both are aprakrita, and we are the very example thereof, without in any way being associated with phenomenal qualities. We, through our spiritual body and senses, eternally cultivate different types of bhakti, and for propagating it, we freely roam about all the worlds. A neophyte devotee may think that his endeavor of culturing bhakti shows the progress in his willingness of Shravana and Kirtana, but the fact is that that to create enthusiasm and rapture in him for tasting the succulence of bliss, Bhakti Devi kindly condescends to the senses of the serving temperament. The great souls never agree with the theory that bhakti depends on one's own endeavor. It entirely depends upon the grace of God. Therefore, he, Gopakumara, if you desire, or therefore, hey, Gopakumara, if you desire to go immediately to Vaikuntha, then go to that Sri Braja land, because that Braja is the best land to fulfill the highest pursuit in life. There you should constantly perform Sri Krishna Nama Sankirtana, which is the best among all the transcendental devotional practices, but that should be done with the sole yearning of attaining the lotus feet of Sri Bhagavan, and at the same time must be completely disassociated from the tendency of jnana and karma. Sri Krishna Nama Sankirtana soon will bring forth the prema unto the heart, and endowed with the treasure of prema, you will happily enter into Vaikuntha and have the vision of Sri Krishna in person. No doubt the Yogindras of Tapaloka have said that among all the elements of bhakti, the smarana meditation is the best, and as per their idea, kirtana is cultured only through the tongue, and that may be pleasing to the ears, but that happiness is very little, whereas smaran is done in the mind, who is the monitor of all the senses, and it disassociates the mind from the attachment of the worldly objects, which is practically impossible by other means. Therefore, smaran is definitely superior to kirtan. But, to speak the truth, in our opinion, which is the unbiased conclusion, Kirtana is the best among all, for Smaran is done only in the mind, which is very treacherous, whereas Kirtan delights the tongue, mind and ears, as well as those who listen to it. Again, Smaran cannot be perfectly done without Kirtan. Without Kirtan, the treacherous mind does not get composed. Nay, it is said that what could be had in Satya Yuga by Dhyana, in Treta Yuga by Yagya, in Dwarpa Yuga by Archana, can all be easily had in Kali Yuga by Sri Krishna Nam Sankirtana. Therefore, Kirtana is superior to them all. Kirtana is the friend to his all other senses as well as to those who listen to it. They all get a chance to culture bhakti, whereas Smaran is only for the mind. Secondly, if the tongue, which drives the outer and inner senses and is controlled, then chitta becomes complacent, and in the complacent heart only Smaran of Bhagavan is possible. Therefore, Kirtan favors the Smarana. This is the agreed statement of persons who subscribe to the process of dhyana. Again, the second argument may be that when smriti of God becomes constant, there comes dhyana. At the time of kirtan, when dhyana comes, then all the senses, tongue, eye, ear, get absorbed in dhyana. So dhyana is definitely superior to kirtan. Aspect becomes the best and sweetest. So it is said by the holy men, as per one's nishta, sentimental attachment to the respective aspects of bhakti, one secures prema. Here we find Sankirtana helps the pleasure of dhyana. Again, dhyana also helps the kirtan to go deeper before. Therefore, both are reciprocal, and we may say both are the same. Dhyana is as blissful as Sankirtana, because both give remembrance of the beloved Lord and bring forth peace in the heart. Contradicting this, a subscriber of Dhyana method may argue that even as a man with high fever may feel that he drinks sweet cool water, and without water may even quench his thirst, likewise in Dhyana one may feel bliss. But in Kirtan, everything cannot be expressed, such as expressing one's sorrowful heart to his dear friend so as to get solace. And there are certain things most secret which cannot be exposed in public through Kirtana, whereas in Dhyana one may perpetuate it in the mind and feel greater bliss than Kirtan. But the fact is that dhyana is possible only at the solitary place, and that too alone. But kirtan can be performed in a lonely as well as a crowded place. Amongst all the kirtan, Sri Krishna Nam Sankirtana is the best, because this Nam Sankirtan produces prema in no time. Therefore the wise, without any contradiction, have established that Sri Krishna Nama Sankirtan is the best process among all phases of bhakti. When Sri Krishna Nama enchants a devotee in ecstasy and dances on his tongue, at that time the devotee drinks deep the nectarine succulence thereof, which cannot be compared with anything else. Nay, who will be able to fathom its depth? Although the greatness of all the divine names is the same, yet as per one's spiritual sentiment, one takes recourse to a particular name, and thereby, delightfully chanting the same, he gets his solace. The nectarine divine name, when it dances on the tongue, subsequently surcharges all the other senses with bliss. The divine name, when sung aloud, inundates the chanter with bliss, at the same time the listeners too. Whereas dhyana creates ananda and benefits only the one who does it. Therefore kirtan is far superior to dhyana. Sri Krishna Nam Sankirtan is the safest, easiest, strongest and most direct means to attain the prema. It is dearest to Sri Krishna and it infatuates Sri Krishna at once. Not only that, The premic devotees of Sri Krishna accept Sri Nam Sankirtana as the be-all and end-all, without any contradiction. It is a fact that Sri Krishna Nam Sankirtana directly brings forth the prema into the devotee, and it submerges him into the ocean of bliss. Those who are drinking deep the nectar of prema jointly in single voice declare that Sri Krishna Nam Sankirtana itself is the very embodiment of prema. They also say Sri Krishna Nam Sankirtana brings ecstasy, which is the highest characteristic of prema. It enchants all the senses at a time. Ecstatic singing of Krishna Nama Sankirtan and Krishna Prema both are the same. Even at the pang of separation, premic devotees get solace in singing Nam Sankirtana. As a Chartaka bird looketh for quenching his thirst nowhere else, even when there is no cloud of rains, but cries for water from the sky, or as the female Chakravaka bird at night for union with her consort cries all the while, so too a premic devotee, pang of separation from his beloved Lord, sings Sri Krishna Nam. This Vipralamba Bhajana is the zenith of prema. The Leelas and glories of Sri Krishna are an ocean of nectarine bliss, and Nama Sankirtana is the natural flow of current of different Leelas and glories of that ocean of nectarine bliss. It flows in the heart of the devotee on its own, accord by the grace of Sri Krishna alone. It cannot be had by one's own effort. A sincere aspirant who does Nama Sankirtana through proper channel, free from offense, and properly guided by having enlightenment from a spiritual guru, finds his apparent sufferings due to sins being destroyed in time if he simply wishes. Suppose a devotee physically or mentally is suffering, he may think it is due to his prarabdha, but such suffering can be got rid of if he simply prays for it, and whereas a true devotee never prays for anything save and except the service of Sri Krishna for his satisfaction alone. One who is not a genuine devotee, who shouts Krishna Nam with his selfish idea to get rid of his sufferings, never gets rid of the sufferings. On the contrary, he commits offense against the divine name. Those who serve Harinama are really great souls. The current of the nectarine bliss that flows in their heart they want to keep secretly, even as a man with a great fortune does not allow others to know it. Therefore, outwardly, a devotee exhibits in his person some type of sufferings or being born in a low family. Sri Krishna Nama Sankirtan washes away all types of defects and sorrows of a devotee. But some great souls, to give a lesson to the people, being as gracious as the Lord, welcome sorrows in life, or apparently something wrong they do, such as devotees like Bharata, who, though was pure in heart, yet to teach the aspirants about the consequence of attachment, loved a fawn. Next, Yudhisthira, so great that he was known as Dharmaraja, he too accepted the challenge of playing dice. They all were maintaining austere purity, yet they did so just to warn the people against the evil deeds. I'll leave it there, shall I? There's quite a bit more to go on. Oh no, there's not that much more. So I finish the chapter, there's another page.
Might as well, yeah.
Okay. My dear Gopakumara, whatever obstacle may fall on your path, you must get lessons from them, and that will help you get rid of all the obstructions on your path of progress. We also will always come to your help. We have observed that you have become the recipient of Sri Krishna's choicest favor, and you are firm in your determination by his grace. That is why you could not be influenced by the tempting words of inhabitants of Tapaloka, and did not give up your yearning for the transcendental Lord of Vaikuntha. When Pipalayana Maharishi of Tapaloka said that it is better to visualize God in meditation than try to see him through the eyes, you could not maintain your fervor for meeting the Lord in person. The form of Sri Krishna is Satchidananda, transcendental. He can be realized only through the transcendental senses. Therefore, so long as his divine grace has not touched one's eyes, one cannot have the vision of his transcendental form. Whereas, when one becomes recipient of his blessings, he can see him through these physical eyes. When one is endowed with the divine blessing and Sri Krishna makes his manifestation with his beatific transcendental form into the transparent heart of a devotee, then the devotee sees him with the feeling that the beloved Lord had appeared before his sensitive eyes, and his Leela swings in his heart, and he is inundated in the flood of the ocean of bliss. Due to the unreserved mercy of Sri Krishna, as well as by dint of devotional fervor, a devotee witnesses the beatific transcendental form of Sri Krishna with those physical eyes. In this case, too, the vision is as clear as through the meditative mind. When one is endowed with transcendental bliss, his vision of God developed in these physical eyes as real as the vision in meditation. On the other hand, the first one is far more practical and direct than the second one. In both the cases, the subjective gravity is of the bestowed blessings of Sri Krishna, and objective liability is with the mind and the eyes. Therefore, both of them are subservient when grace is bestowed upon one, otherwise it does not come to anyone's purview. The Lord is not subservient to anything, himself being self-same and supremely independent, but so gracious is he that for a little service to him he bestows abounding grace upon one. The highest grace is counted when he becomes visible to the devotionally operated physical eyes of his devotee, and that vision is more blissful than the vision in meditation. Therefore, to have the vision of Sri Krishna in person through the devotionally operated physical eyes is the final reward of all the ninefold devotional practices. The prospect of all sadhana is to meet the Lord in person, at which the very nescience of jiva is driven out with his very root, and forthwith the prema is increased. Sri Prahlada, son of Kayadu, although he was constantly in his meditative mind visualizing the Lord, yet was passionately yearning to glimpse the Lord in person through his eyes. The vivid example of this is that after having met the Lord in person on the shore of the sea, he possessed deeper passionate sentiment of devotion. Somebody may argue that it so happens in some cases that at the practical meeting of Sri Krishna, suddenly some devotee's eyes unintentionally become closed. But it should not be considered meditation, whereas it is to be understood as a symptom of excessive joy, like Astasattvica Vikara at the approach of the zenith of prema, because dhyana or meditation is done in the absence of the Lord. How can it be operative in the presence of the Lord? On the contrary, Sankirtana is accepted in his very presence as well as in absence. The divine name, which is impregnated with all the blissful qualities of the Lord, is again more favorite with him upon his own form than his own form. The name is beneficial to the universe, easily acceptable and full of sublime beauty. In Nama Sankirtana, the Sambhoga and Vipralamba, with all their sentiments remain. Therefore, nothing else can be compared with the divine Krishna Nama Sankirtana. Now, therefore, Bho Gopakumara, You follow the advice of Sri Shiva, and as we direct you, without further delay in this world of mukti, proceed hurriedly to Sri Mathura, the favorite place of Sri Krishna. We also pay our obeisance to Sri Mathura. Sri Gopakumara said, after hearing their advice, which is divinely blissful to the ears as well as to the heart, I, with blissful emotional perturbance, paid my obeisance to them, as well as to Sri Shiva and to Sri Parvati, and at once I saw myself arrived at Braja, at which I was extremely surprised. And that's the end of chapter 3.